to this session on coaching skills. We are going to give you some practical hints and tips here on how to set your managers up for success in 2021. We have just mentioned this session is being recorded. You'll have seen the message pop up just then. 1 second. Yeah, you'll have seen the message pop up to say that this is being recorded. We're taking your implied consent to use those images and sounds and questions. With regard to what we want you to get from this, we want you to come away from this session. It's only 30 minutes. We want you to come away from this session with some real world practical advice as to how to help your managers become better coaches for 2021. It's going to be an interesting year. Who knows what's in store for us all? Fingers crossed it's a positive change from where we are now. But yeah, without further ado, my name is Paddy Thompson. I'm the Managing Director of Azimuth. We are a people development company. We help organizations improve business performance by developing people. And to do that, we work with a host of subject matter experts. Two of those are with us today. We have Hilary G, who is an executive coach, a head coach at London Business School. Thanks very much. And we have Wei Chen with us, who runs COACHLAB, which is one of the tools that all of our coaches use to help them coach managers have coaching conversations. Coaching was mentioned a lot. But yeah, so shall we crack on? We've got Wei and Hilary, and the first thing they want to talk about, because obviously we have a bit of an agenda for us to follow here. So you know who we are. Now you're about to find out what it is we're going to do. What are the biggest challenges that we think managers are facing this year and next year coming up? Hilary, that's a broad question.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So in the work that I've been doing this year, obviously there's been huge change for people, and we've all been struggling with working with the technology that we have now and working from home, juggling space at home. Sometimes I'm in this room, sometimes because of noise I'm upstairs, sometimes my wife's upstairs working from home. So those kind of challenges, not just for managers, but also the people they manage, has obviously caused huge amount of upheaval for people. But apart from just the logistical upheaval and the learning curve that we've all been on and our teams have all been on, there's also been the challenge of being less connected. Yeah. And one of the things that has really become clear this year is, you know, we miss the things that we start not having taken them for granted before. And I think, you know, we took for granted before. One thing is definitely we took for granted, and that was the importance of just saying good morning to people as we walk past their desk and being able to meet over coffee and bumping into each other as we grab a glass of water, or as I put the phone down from a difficult call with a client or a supplier, that someone next to me turns and says to me, that was a difficult call. Or that as a manager with a member of my team, I can just turn and say, hey, should we catch up for 5-10 minutes at some point today? And just that informality, which oils the cogs, just allows us to connect with people in passing. And when you're remote, connecting with people in passing doesn't happen unless you make it happen. So that has been enormous. And so because there's been a lack of connection between managers and their teams, then it becomes harder to talk about the difficult stuff and to talk about tasks, because we haven't got the oil in the cogs. And so the cogs start to grate a bit and grind a bit. And suddenly I'm having a conversation as a manager with someone in my team who I haven't seen for a few days, I haven't talked to for a few days. And the first thing I need to say is, what happened with that client? And it's difficult. Or what happened with that supplier and it didn't work? Or in that team meeting, I thought you were going to do this. And it's very easy to just be talking about the difficult stuff. And
I find that some of the small talk that we have naturally, Hilary, becomes almost artificial. But for me anyway, do you find that?
Yeah, and I've had to adapt, and a lot of the managers I've been coaching or working with in training courses, we've talked about um, how do you have some small talk? How do you connect with people um, without it feeling artificial? And one of the way we'll talk a little bit about how COACHLAB supports that later, but that's certainly helped. But certainly in the work that I do, some of which with COACHLAB, some of which without, I find that I've needed to consciously think about doing the informal connection. And as I've done that more and more, it's become easier and easier. And eventually it's come to the point where I now feel much more like I will just do it anyway. And it's not really, but I'm having coaching conversations every day, and that's my butter. And one of the reasons I became a coach was because I found it relatively easy to build rapport quickly with people, to connect with them on a human level, and then to talk about task and development and learning and well-being. And so it's using my strength. But a lot of managers, their strength is the kind of the technical part of the business stuff.
Yeah.
And the people side of it is something that they're discovering they need to learn and have to do. And it's actually much harder, particularly for people who are quite, very strong functionally. Sometimes it's very difficult for them to connect so much on a personal level.
Well, that is most
people need to
managers,
feel
isn't
connected.
it? Yeah, that is most managers. We recruit or promote people based on their technical ability, not their interpersonal ability.
Yeah.
So we find the best developer or the best salesperson, and often we promote them outside of their comfort zone, beyond their strengths, and make them the manager of. And we haven't really focused on those who are best suited to be managers. We've just gone for technical performance.
Yeah.
So what are you and Wei finding when it comes to those coaching conversations? What are you and Wei finding is helpful?
Well, I think there've been some really interesting conversations you've had, Wei, with clients, haven't there been?
Yeah, so I'll kind of jump in there on two themes that you talked about. So one of them is that connection piece, but the other is, particularly this year, there's been a lot of new line managers who've come into that people management role, often without the kind of support on how to do it. They were very good at their jobs, but people management is a very different skill set. And particularly when they aren't able to ask their peers more kind of informally on, what's best practice, they're really needing to do that themselves. And if they haven't had the training or they can't model that behavior from their managers, it's a bit of a tricky situation. And then I guess on the connection piece, that's a really big struggle that we're hearing from so many managers when we're talking to them. And it's around knowing how best to support their teams when you're not with them, because it's balancing that. Do I support them or do I push them? Because if they're not really delivering on their objectives, should I be pushing them a bit more? But actually, if I'm pushing them more, will they have that stress and anxiety that I also need to be concerned about? And so there's a lot of thought going into how do I best communicate and engage my team so that they can be as productive as possible and I'm supporting them without micromanaging, but also without just pushing them too far, essentially. And so there's a lot of things that they really need to think about. And to be honest, just when I speak to them, that one word, just overwhelmed, pops up a lot.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think you add to that as a new manager dealing with people skills, and quite a lot of managers are managing people who they've never actually met in person. It's all been online. And then the first thing that they're having to deal with is they're having to help people deal with a totally new way of working and help people deal with feeling overwhelmed. And my experience of helping managers get better and better at coaching has been that, the first point of helping managers get better at coaching is about getting them to ask great questions and listen. But they tend to be better at doing that sort of thing when it's more technical or business oriented or functional. But as soon as they start asking open questions and discovering that someone is feeling overwhelmed, managers can feel really ill-equipped to address that. It's kind of, what am I? Am I a counselor or a manager? I've not been trained to support people with well-being issues, emotional issues. I'm good at sales, or I'm good at IT, or I'm good at procurement, or I'm good at the accounting side of things. And now I'm having to suddenly deal with people bringing up emotional issues. And actually, I'm connecting with them in their own home, and suddenly we're blurring the boundaries of work and home life. And many people have really struggled because of, you might think without the commute that suddenly people have more time, but actually what people are discovering is the commute was a wonderful place to break between home and work. People read books, people listened to music and podcasts. They had a bit of me time in a commute. And suddenly they don't have that. And how are managers equipped to help people think, well, what did you lose from the shift from co-located office work to home-based work? And what's good about what's gone and what's not? And how do you replace it? And of course, the answer to that is going to be very personal. Each person's going to have a different thing. And the one family will have kids and another won't. One will have a partner, another won't. Some will have flatmates they get on with, or they'll have housemates they don't get on with. And suddenly, as a manager, you're having to provide a lot more to people than you would have done a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting asked for that an awful lot with regard to our clients when they're talking to us. The content we're being asked to provide this year, we've moved far away from delivering on topic. We now start to deliver with our clients a task. My people need to do the following. How on earth do we? 18 months, 12 months ago, it used to be, I'd like negotiation skills, I'd like time management, etc. We're not being asked for that anymore. We're being asked for people who are, well, they're here, they're remote, they need to engage. I have a group of people who have to, and that's what we're being asked to do. So in terms of coaching is always a fundamental part of that solution now, and it has to be, particularly remotely. So if we go on to some tips and advice, I think we've all got the same challenges here. Sorry, we all broadly share a lot of the same issues. We don't have the same challenges, but a lot of the same cores and themes are presenting themselves. So
just before we move on, Paddy, we move on, if anyone wants to type into the chat any extra things that they've noticed about manager challenges, then please do, because then as we shift into thinking about pitfalls, tips, ideas, approaches, we can try and pick those up as we go. So if there's something that we haven't mentioned in manager challenges, do drop that into the chat and we'll have a look at that.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, sorry, Hilary and Wei, what do you, let's think about some tips and advice for people then who are working with managers, who are working with those who need to coach, haven't done it remotely before and find themselves in an alien situation.
Yeah.
What do we do? How do we make the day-to-day excellent from just ticking boxes? How do we progress standards and make performance better?
Yeah. So I think you've already mentioned one thing that I think is really important, and that is, coaching at the moment is even more important as part of the solution than it has been in the past, because there is so much more individualization of situation. Where we had a group of people all working from the office and all going out on the road or all being in the office 9 to 5 together, then the similarities between everyone's context were so close that you could then just think about what are the group needs and what are the coaching needs within that setting. But now, where each person I'm working with in my team, one will be sat on a child's bed because that's the only place they can be. Another will have no children, but will be in the same room as their partner and have a sense of, so the differences now are so big between each person's setting that there has to be much more individualization of the managerial approach, and that has to be done through improve coaching skills. And I think wherever I work with managers, one of the key things that comes out as we develop coaching skills is people say, this is really good and I'm going to use it with my team and it's going to make a big difference. Is someone training my boss to do this? Because I could do with someone doing this for me. And are we really developing a coaching culture in the business, or are we just training first line managers, maybe second and third line managers, but not the top tier people? And so if the CEO doesn't use a coaching approach at all with the senior leadership team, and if the senior leadership team don't use a coaching approach at all with their senior managers, and they don't use it with their middle managers, how do we expect junior managers to learn from the experience of being coached about what good coaching and bad coaching looks like? So I think one of the things is to recognize that in most organizations, people who become managers tend to get there because they were good at what they did. They were good problem solvers. They could come up with ideas. They could make things happen. But to be a good coach, you actually have to be really good at listening. You have to be good at asking great questions. You have to be good at showing empathy and compassion for people. It's shown, there's good brain science now that shows that when you coach with compassion, you light up parts of the brain that turn you into a seeker system person rather than a fear system. In the fear system, we tend to be in fight, flight, or freeze. But in the seeker system, which in more medical terms is known as the parasympathetic nervous system, we're more relaxed, we're more creative, we connect better, we're more open to new ideas. Neurogenesis starts to happen, which is new links between neurons in the brain, and we can think more about the future, and we can be more creative. And
so
when managers fail to connect with people in an empathic and compassionate way, they push people into the fear system, which then shuts down their creativity.
So how do we help people do that quickly and easy? Look, if you've got 500 or more employees, even if you've got 50 or more employees in your organization, hold your hands up here. No one's paying us to give coaching skills to every single one of their employees, as much as I'd love them to. That isn't happening. So how do we get those skills out quickly and easily for those coaching managers?
Yeah, because I think Hillary's got his coach hat on, is talking about really that ideal best practice, but let's bring it back to actually the manager's hat. And the first thing is just giving them the understanding of why they need to do it. Because for a lot of managers, when you tell them you should be a good coach, they automatically think, oh, not another skill set I need to learn, not another responsibility. So giving them that understanding of why coaching is important for their roles as a manager and giving them resources like this. So Google did a huge study on what makes a really great manager. And they identified 10 behaviors that really sets good managers apart from bad ones. And being a good coach comes top of the list. And even a lot of the other behaviors and attributes are part of that. So being a good communicator, empowering teams, not micromanaging. And so I think the first piece is really about that education. And I've kind of summarized a couple of things apart from that as well. So after education is really giving them the tools to support them with that. Because it's one thing to say you should be a good coach and why it's important for that, but what actually is coaching? And so giving them the context of coaching is about having conversations that is very much about listening, about asking questions, and giving them little tips of what types of conversations this might be about, and also what types of questions you want to ask. So how we do it at COACHLAB is we just tell them, coaching isn't this really mythological concept. It is fundamentally a couple of discussion topics. It's around not only talking about tasks and objectives, but also exploring your personal development, exploring feedback, reviewing and reflecting on how your performance has been. And here we've got a 2020 wrap up just because it's been such a crazy year. We're telling them, take a step back and reflect a bit. Think about what's gone well, think about what's gone less well, and how do you move forwards with that? And also having conversations about well-being. And then you can start putting very actionable conversations from a very broad concept. And then when you think about those topics, again, a lot of it is, well, what do I do? What do I ask? And there's a huge range of resources online with questions, question banks, question lists. And it's really just getting them comfortable with asking questions. So again, how we do it is...
If I dive in a moment there, and this was one of the reasons why I was so interested in COACHLAB, is because when I run coaching skills workshops, and I did one a couple of days ago, there's a classic comment at one point where someone said, God, this is really, really powerful. It's going to be really useful. I think I need a cheat sheet. And often, it's a cheat sheet of the kind of questions to ask. You might use the GROW methodology and, what are some of the goal questions that I might ask, or reality or options, or wrap up, what way forward questions. And I need a cheat sheet for that. And that, I provide those to people. But one of the reasons that I really got interested in COACHLAB was Wei started talking to me back in June and said, can I get your feedback? And one of the things that COACHLAB does, and I'll say this to people now that I work with, is if you want a cheat sheet, COACHLAB actually does this and provides a cheat sheet. I think that's roughly where you were going, wasn't it, Wei?
Yeah, because I guess thinking back to what the challenges that managers facing with coaching is, they might have the training or they might be reading it up front, but when you're in that conversation, a lot of managers are too focused on thinking, what question should I be asking? What do I do? And it's this black box for them. And so again, it's really about making them feel more comfortable to focus on listening to what their teams are saying and really honing in on that skill set. And for us, we just give them that cheat sheet. We say, this is, you want to talk about personal development. Here are some really great questions for you to explore, get you to open up a bit more outside of your tasks and objectives, and really build that connection and have a different type of conversation.
And it was really interesting hearing feedback from one of your clients where I wondered, will senior managers really benefit from this? How will they use it? And it was fascinating when some of the feedback that we were getting from the senior managers was, what this has done for me is it's made me change my conversation a bit. I tend to have a quick catch up with everyone once a week, and it tends to be pretty task focused. How are you doing on A, B, C? Okay, what's the problem with C? Okay, let's talk that through. Let's solve it. I'll help you solve it. You go off, and then we'll catch up again in a week. And some of the senior managers were recognizing that by being given this cheat sheet, by using COACHLAB, they were slowing down those conversations and actually asking better questions, feeling a bit less like they had to solve all the problems. So they were feeling, a big sense of relief. I don't have to micromanage so much. I'm actually enabling other people in the team. And they said, we might not have that every week, but we'll have it certainly once a month, so that once a month we have a more developmental, more open conversation. And I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah, we've got a couple of points coming through on the chat that I'll list in a moment. But so for example, Natalie just said listening is key, and I found, so I've used COACHLAB, don't work for COACHLAB, but I've used the product, and what I've found is that it gives me more time to listen because I'm not worried about the questions that need to come next. So yeah, listening is key, and it is about moving away, as Natalie said, away from the promotion of learned helplessness by spoon feeding. Well, I don't like, this is spoon feeding me, so I can just listen to the individual, and it makes it so much easier. I'll read the next one, but Wei, did you have anything to add on that while I read the comment from Maria?
I think definitely that listening in that space, and it's just slowing down. I think that was what someone said, was it's around not being so focused on task objectives, and actually slowing down and having a different kind of conversation where you do focus on listening. And when you do, you often uncover the little, roadblocks and really the pain points that your teams are facing. And when you're able to uncover that, it just unlocks so much more for your tasks and objectives. And so I think people often think, in order to get more, I have to talk more at the problem rather than coming at it from a different type of perspective, having a different type of conversation. And it is just better for everyone. I'm a big fan of coaching here.
Well, it helps us get results. That's the point.
Results.
And I think what Maria's just said as well in the chat is really, really important. And that is, line management is not something everyone will be good at. It should be a consideration when employing or promoting someone into a role which has line management responsibilities. And I think that's so important, Maria. And I think
we're just waiting for Hillary to join us again. You'll find that this will only ever happen when Hillary has an incredibly important point to make.
If they get into the new role.
Hillary, sorry, we missed 20 seconds. Or maybe not 20, perhaps 15.
Okay.
I was just saying how this only ever happens when you have a perfect thing to say. So, yeah.
So am I coming through loud and clear now?
Yeah, perfectly. Carry
Good.
on, please.
So yeah, so I was just saying that Maria was saying, with line management, it's not something everyone will be good at, and it should be a consideration when employing or promoting someone, and that is absolutely right. Really, really important. And when you're promoting people, it's really important to assess them not just on the skills that they have for doing the role that they're in now, but also the people skills going forward. But having said that, often organizations will promote someone into a managerial role without giving them much training. But if they have a manager who coaches them, that can make a big difference, as long as that manager knows how to coach. So, and then of course, by experiencing good coaching with my line manager, if I'm new to line management, that also gives me a model of how I do the line management going forward. But I agree, Maria, it's really important. The number of people who get promoted into a line management role without assessing if they want or have line management skills, and then they don't get trained, which of course
Bob's just made an interesting point, Hillary, with regard to mentoring, and is this as applicable? And I think it absolutely is.
If I kind of talk it, COACHLAB actually, when I first started building it, was targeted at mentoring to begin with, because for me that was where a lot of the development conversations came from. But I think we wanted to expand it because not every organization is lucky to have mentoring, but line management is really there for everyone. So best practice coaching is absolutely applicable to mentoring as well. And with COACHLAB, again, it's adding that structure, because that's really where it started for me, which is I had mentoring conversations where my mentors just said, what do you want to talk about? How are you? Which is so open. And as a mentee, often you don't really know where to take it. So COACHLAB is about giving you that structure to take ownership for the individual of, looking after their own development and really actioning on that.
Yeah. And Wei, I know that one of your clients has asked you to adapt COACHLAB to their supervision system. It's a clinical care organization, and you've adapted it for the clinical supervision process, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's basically all conversations where you really need to take a step back and have those coaching, mentoring conversations, whether it's supervisions, whether it's performance in the management. That's kind of where we think we can go.
Yeah, and I think just kind of picking up as well, Smriti has just said some of the feedback I've heard from clients is that they're able to free up time for higher goals as they're able to get the team to grow and get independent over time. And definitely, if you spoon feed people less, then they pick up the spoon themselves and they learn to feed themselves. And so whilst initially it is more time consuming than just telling people what to do and spoon feeding them, it's less time consuming as time goes on. And it's, it has to be seen as an investment rather than as a time cost with no payback. But I think that the bottom point on the tips and pitfalls is, it's so important to make sure strategy and structure are fit for purpose, and that your line managers are really bought into that. And of course, to check that people are really bought into strategy and structure, I can't just tell someone who I manage, here's the strategy and structure, buy into it, and it's fit for purpose. I actually need to coach them, and I need to say, okay, given the strategy and structure that's been given, what are your thoughts about what will be easy and what will be difficult? And let's talk about what you think will be difficult, and let's have a coaching session on how you're going to solve that. So again, even though point 5 seems a bit glib, you've got to have structure and strategy right. The
Yeah.
point really when we're talking about coaching skills is you only know how right it is for a manager who's leading if you've had really good conversations with them and you've coached them to make the strategy and structure work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Hilary. As we come to an end, we've had one question just pop up here that says, it was a direct message, so I'm not going to read their name unless they're comfortable with that. But is there, have we got any tips to help managers who say they haven't got the time to coach, they're too busy performing themselves?
Yeah, lots.
Look, there are loads. There are too many for the remaining. Oh, we booked you. This session was supposed to finish at 12:45. They always run over. That's how this is. We can give you a lot more information afterwards with regard to those hints and tips. The reason we've arranged this session today is that Azimuth's clients have seen COACHLAB in action and want to use it across their organizations. We feel incredibly strongly about developing high-performing organizations with high-performing individuals. And the COACHLAB is a fantastic tool. Right? You know, I'm not on commission here. We're not getting paid to say this. We think it's fantastic, and it's a really simple tool to use to help people have those conversations. So if they don't have time to coach, for want of a better term, they certainly have time to ask. Yes, they're delivering, they're doing their day job themselves, but they have time to ask their direct reports how they're getting on. They must do, because they do performance reviews. Yeah. So if they're doing that, how do I ask those questions? COACHLAB's a great way of structuring that conversation to have it quickly, effectively, efficiently, and then getting some decent results. You need return on investment. You'll get decent results if you have decent conversations.
And I think, Paddy, it's worth adding to what you've just said there, and that is, on one of the programs I'm delivering for you with a client currently, after people were learning about improved coaching and feedback skills, they were saying they were saving an hour, 2 hours a week as a manager because they were having more.
It went up to 3 hours, Hilary. Sorry, just to correct you there, it actually went up to 3 to 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it was a real range. It was a real range, but people were taking huge, they were saving huge amounts of time by having better conversations and enabling people to solve problems themselves. And so actually they ended up, by putting the time in coaching, they found they saved time, and COACHLAB helps with that, and training helps with that.
Yeah. Wait, have you got our contact details?
Yes.
So we've got those on the slide.
Right at the end.
Wonderful.
We'll be sending through the kind of presentation in an email afterwards, but
if you have any questions, this is to all of you. If you have any questions, or you want to know a little bit more about how this is deployed, but you just want to have a quick 5-10 minute chat, a virtual coffee, if you will, saying, look, how do I do this? Because I'd like a little more of a practical hints and tips. Just drop us a line. We'll send you, there's our email addresses. We'll send you the content from today, and we can arrange to have a more in-depth conversation around how to do that. We'll also give you a quick demo of COACHLAB so that you can see it in action, which I think is important for you if your people are struggling to have those coaching conversations. But ultimately, let's have a conversation after this. Let's make sure that we're able to help you drive that performance forwards. Anything at all that you want to talk about. I was changing batteries in smoke detectors last night at 3 in the morning. I'll chat about anything, okay? Anything you want to talk about, drop us an email. We'll get in touch. That's part of the small talk that's missing from the water cooler or the coffee machine. So I can tell you all about my lack of sleep. So just,
nice, Paddy.
Thanks. Just drop us a line. We'll give you the information that we need to give you and answer any of the questions you might have. But before we do round this up, and I'll ask Hilary and Wei for their closing points. If you've got a quick question, do drop it in the chat. We'll try and answer it now, but we've got a couple of minutes. Some of you have either got lunch in 9 minutes, or you'll probably have another Zoom call or a Teams meeting that starts at 1 o'clock, because we do love to schedule them back to back, don't we?
So there's one question or comment that's already in the chat, which is, someone said they've found delegation is easily abused. Is delegated from top managers to middle and to bottom and to the lowest frontline staff, regardless of the workloads that the staff are facing, ending up with a lot of resignation and missing in action happening, and a blaming culture is happening in the name of delegation. My team conducts trainings and builds up good attributes. However, it seems that this heavy delegation culture is one of the problems that holds the effectiveness of the trainings back. And I think, Yokel, I think that's, that's absolutely right. And of course, in coaching, if you're coaching someone well, you'll start with, hi, how are you doing? And you'll ask the person about how they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And you will then follow through on, and how's the family and how's the work, particularly at the moment. Really important to ask about what's going on outside, because people are scared about loved ones getting ill or having to do extra because they're having to homeschool whilst working, etc. So we have to ask, how are you? How are things? How's it going with work? How's the workload? What are you proud of? And what are you struggling with? And we need to help people with what they're struggling with. And at the same time, there is a sense for many people, you're lucky to have a job at all at the moment. But the trouble is, if you go into an approach with your team of you're lucky to have a job at all, you lose the compassion and you lose the engagement, and then you get resignations. And of course, the people who resign first are often the ones who are not scared about finding another job, so they may well be So the need to look after workloads and manage, and then one of the other things is equipping managers to problem solve upwards with their boss in a coaching conversation, so that when my boss delegates to me, it's not just a fire and forget missile. It's actually a delegation where we will have conversations and my manager will coach me through any challenges I've got. So,
Wei, any closing remarks?
I think for me, it's more around, it's all well to say to your managers, you guys need to be better coaches. But actually, for a lot of them, when you say that, they just think, oh, not another thing. And so it's really around articulating what it's helping to solve. So for them, the pain points on, I don't know how to best support my teams. I can't connect with them. I'm needing to micromanage, or I don't really know how to push them enough. Okay, this is how these types of conversations can support that. Why don't you give it a try, rather than you must do coaching as something that we're now monitoring and measuring.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, thank you all very much for taking the time to join us today, and for submitting those questions and getting involved. What we'll do, Rob, you've raised an interesting point. What we'll do is we'll address that via email afterwards, set up a conversation. It needs to be done. That conversation needs to happen. So if there is anything you'd like to know, you've obviously got our email addresses. Mine's a bit crazy to spell, but do give it a go. And hopefully we'll chat to you all soon. But unless there's any pressing question that you need an immediate reply to, thanks very much, and look forward to chatting to you in the future.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Cheerio.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing. Goodbye.
We still have Nihal and Rochelle
Yeah.
with us. Are they still with us?
It looks as if they are. Nishal's gone. Rochelle, did you want to ask something, or? Okay, just us now.
No, just a delay. Cool. We're
Good.
Still recording.
Yeah, I'll stop recording now. Stop recording.